to talk about Brett Favre. Tiff, I know you're a resident sports expert. So did you know what NFL team this man once played for?
Okay, let me just say, I was reading the Times, and they did a whole article on it, so I know that he played for the Tennessee Titans.
Oh.
Right? No?
How about Green Bay?
I could be.
How about Green Bay? What we were just trying to demonstrate for you all is how easy it is for people in influential positions who cover the media to be also swayed by misinformation. That was just an exercise. Do not try this at home.
And scene.
There's been a lot in the news, obviously, about Janet Jackson, commentary about Kamala Harris. And while that has been interesting, I'm actually much more interested in the angle of why it is that we think celebrities, people in the public space, are supposed to be educated and aware and knowledgeable about all things politics. And is it right? Is it fair? I'd love to have that conversation with y'all.
I actually am interested in talking about this Brett Favre thing, Angela, but I want to talk about the death penalty in this country. You all have probably seen those posts that a man was lynched today. Saw a lot of people posting about that this week. It's a challenging position for us as Black folks to be in this country. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome.
All right, y'all, welcome home. It's episode 42 of Native Land Pod. So the pod is almost as old as us, you guys, because I can't believe we're already on 42.
Yeah, well, I'm older than that, but yes, it's
Well,
almost
me
as old as
too,
you
but
are.
it's close. Well, we're Angela's elders, but
Yeah,
it's
right,
almost
exactly.
as Andrew, you look pretty snazzy in your Miami Vice
You know,
shirt, by
I'm
the
just,
way.
it's my hurricane outfit. In case y'all find me, under a brick.
Well, we are seriously concerned because there is a storm headed your way.
Yeah,
So
we're
are you
expecting a
safe?
direct hit here in Tallahassee, possibly a Cat 3,
Oh
which
my
would be
God.
about the strongest storm that we've had here. So I had 2 hurricanes when I was mayor of Tallahassee, and that was after almost 50 years of no storm. It's 30 years of no storms, and now we've been... whatever. So I'm actually, we got packing the family up and they're trying to get out of here any minute now. And I'll get out when I finish some house preparations. But yeah.
Well, thank you for being dedicated
Yes.
to stick around.
Hey, okay.
That's a welcome home for
Angela
real.
already, right? Exactly. Angela, I've already complimented you on your shredded denim.
Yeah.
Yep,
I
loving
love
the
it.
shredded.
I just
But
got
since
thrown
you-
around in a garbage disposal, but don't mind me.
Loving the shredded.
I
It looks
just
good.
don't think I was going to wear it. So, in Seattle, it's getting a little colder. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, I'm at home. So let me put this on before this is not in vogue. Is this in vogue
It's
now?
the first show
If
of
you're
autumn.
wearing it, it's in
I'm
vogue.
in denim. I don't know what happened to you all since this photo shoot.
I
I'm
still
not
wear
gonna...
denim right down below. I can't show it right now, but yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, so
I have
Andrew
no denim.
apparently is
I'm
wearing
working on
denim
it.
draws today. Tiff is
Oh, me too then. I didn't know that counted. I'm wearing, trust me, I got on denim somewhere.
Tiff, let me tell you, Tiff don't ever have on denim. Tiff might write denim on her hands, and I just want y'all to know again for the record, in case y'all
She
missed
ain't giving
it.
us that much.
This
She ain't giving us that
uniform
much.
came from Tiffany. She has not followed the
With
uniform but
with
3
her
times.
jean boots. Her jean
And I only
boots.
got those boots because Angela had them and I thought they were cute. So then I went and bought them and I probably hadn't worn them since. I don't want to kick us off because my subject is somber and I
Well,
don't want
I'm
to
going to
close.
have to start with Janet J.
But I think we
It's
should
just-
end
that's
on a lighter
somber, too.
note. But see, that's somber in a different way. So I think we should end with celebrities. I think, Angela, you should kick us off.
I got a
Okay,
celebrity
yeah.
Brett
too.
Favre. But that's different.
Okay.
That's
All right,
different.
I'm
Celebrity and
kicking
real
us off.
news.
All right, I'm
Yes.
kicking us off. So why don't we do this? Instead of me kicking you off, let's go straight to the Ways and Means Committee testimony that Brett Favre gave earlier this week at a hearing about the misuse of TANF, which is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. All of those dollars being misallocated in several states, and Mississippi is one of them. Brett Favre has found himself in the crosshairs. Let's roll it.
Democrats and Republicans should agree. Rampant state misuse of TANF funds is hurting efforts to help vulnerable families and children. And I was told Ways and Means Committee was working on this problem, so I was willing to speak to you to encourage Congress to reform this important anti-poverty program. And I urge Congress to put TANF guardrails in place to ensure that what happened in Mississippi doesn't happen again. I urge Congress to pass the TANF reforms included in the committee member bills, reforms designed to target funds to those truly most in need, to help low-income American find and keep a job, to limit how states can spend TANF grants and reduce wasteful bureaucracy, and to protect taxpayer funds from fraud and abuse. And in closing, thank you, Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Neal.
Now, when you hear Brett Favre here, he sounds like the model citizen. He's, using all the right talking points. Waste, fraud, and abuse is something that Democrats and Republicans have agreed on for a long time when we talk about government spending. Now, here's the challenge. There's a lot that was left out and a lot left to be desired. But I'm going to go to a Green Bay Packers fan, Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who worked on TANF legislation in the state legislature and has certainly worked on it in the House as a single mother. Please roll the tape.
But I do want to say that I was at the scene of the crime when we ended welfare as we knew it in 1996. I was in Wisconsin. I was a state senator. I had 100 amendments that would have addressed this problem. And what I am saying to you, I just want to repeat some of the things that have been said here already, that this flexibility was deliberate. It indeed, I agree with Mr. Dorch's characterization of it, is that it literally became a slush fund for states to do what they wanted to do. In our own state, we literally had people called diversion specialists, and it was their job to convince you when you showed up pregnant and one baby on one arm and the other at your feet that you didn't need welfare funds, and all of that profit could be used to pay bonuses. I even had an amendment that was directed at some of the vendors who administered welfare to say, you can't earn more than the governor of the state, because these salaries were so lucrative. So surprise, surprise, here we are, 28 years later, discovering the fraud and waste and abuse in this program. We have the same level of poverty. We have, 80% of the people who qualify, people who live in deep, deep, deep poverty, not getting the benefits. People in Mississippi getting, what did you say, Mr. Dorr? $236 a month in 2024. That's the truth. These data are not updated. It's not true. I just want to go on to talk about some other things that I saw in the report. You say and also some of your data, the 600 industries, that's in Maine. So I want to congratulate you with whatever you did in Maine. Whatever happened in Maine didn't happen in Mississippi. So just so.
Okay, so what you see is Brett Favre, a former all-star NFL quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, who found himself embroiled in a huge scandal in Mississippi. Mississippi is accused of misallocating $94 million in TANF funds. Again, that's the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program. It is a block grant program that exists all throughout the country. There is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse, as you just heard Congresswoman Gwen Moore talking about, in this particular program. With Brett Favre, he was working with a nonprofit. Some states utilize nonprofits to allocate these funds through varying programs, varying families who need them. And for the most part, the families that need the resources the most don't actually see these resources. So Brett Favre, for example, is accused of receiving $1.1 million in speaking fees from TANF funds, and also helping to broker a $5 million volleyball stadium to the University of Southern Mississippi, where his daughter attends. These are just some of the ways in which these resources have been used or misused. And I think what makes it egregious is yesterday, Tiff, this is particularly for you. Yesterday, what you see from the headlines, and I know by the time this podcast will be 2 days. So from Tuesday, the headlines are the next day that Brett Favre tells this committee that he is suffering from Parkinson's, because there was also a business who he helped get resources to in the millions that is supposed to help players who have experienced concussions. He uses this moment to disclose to the public that he's been diagnosed with Parkinson's. On the other side of giving millions of dollars of TANF funds to this business, the woman that helped to get the resources to this company has now pled guilty. Her son has pled guilty. There's a civil lawsuit in Mississippi with more than 20 defendants for their role in misallocating TANF funds to everyone except for the people who need them most. So that is what this is all about. It is infuriating, especially when we talk about this handout concept. The
Right.
people who need handouts or really hand-ups don't get them because they're busy padding the pockets of folks who run these organizations and are ensuring that the folks who do need assistance, who are needy families, never see the resources.
Yeah.
So Brett Favre, I am so sorry about your diagnosis. I really am. But that does not excuse you from what you knew when you look at these text messages that I know that we're going to put up on the screen. But for those of you who are listening, he says things like, if I get these resources, will people find out? Right? He says, is the money I was paid 100% legal for the radio commercials? We didn't even talk about those. And then she tells him yes. On another message, he says, I can have my CPA talk with you and get a better understanding of this and go from there. Maybe the university will figure out some things as well, as long as we can use the money any way we choose somehow. Will the public perception be that I became a spokesperson for various state-funded shelters, schools, homes, etc., and was compensated with state money, or can we keep this confidential? This does not sound like someone who says in his testimony that he did not know.
He, let me just add to that. So this company that you're talking about, where he funneled $2.1 million to be exact, is run by Jason Van Landingham. So that $2.1 million that he funneled to him, Jason pleaded guilty to wire fraud. This was in July, admitting to using those funds to pay off gambling and personal debts. Brett Favre and the $1.1 million you referenced, Angela, those were for speeches that he never gave.
Well, allegedly. You got to say allegedly, because he's saying he made the speeches, so we don't want to be caught up in the same defamation.
Allegedly, that he, according to the reporting, he never gave them, but he says allegedly. I just want to point out here, because why this matters to me, my mother's family is from Mississippi. A lot of folks, you all know the Great Migration. A lot of us have roots in Mississippi. Mississippi is a challenge. It is the state with the highest number of Black folks there, and they are in the bottom 10% of poverty when it comes to this country. There's not a single Black statewide elected official in Mississippi, despite having the highest population there. The racism is literally written into the state's constitution in Mississippi. Let me just tell you a little bit about the folks in Mississippi. Then this is welfare, essentially what we're talking. TANF funds are another word for it will be welfare. Mississippi, in 2016, approved just 1.5% of applicants who were applying for these funds. That's according to reporting from Mississippi Today. Just 5 out of 824 applicants were approved. This is all during the time when Brett Favre was stealing millions, among other people. After the reporting came out about this, Mississippi inexplicably started approving more people. Still not enough. In 2018, this is at the height of the scandal, Mississippi spent $113 million in federal funds for TANF funds. This was over its allotment of $86.5 million of unspent funds. Just 5% of that cash went to needy families. That left over $100 million on the table for them to do essentially what they wanted to do. This was under Republican Governor Phil Bryant at the time. His office oversaw the welfare department and their goals. So like Angela said, state and nonprofits used tens of millions of dollars in these federal funds as a playground. And did pretty much whatever they wanted to do. They purchased lavish homes. They gave money to their friends and families. They propped up programs that had little to do with alleviating poverty. Millions also went to other purposes, including other pro football players who have yet to be named, wrestlers, lobbyists, expensive PR campaigns, conservative radio talk shows. The Mississippi Department of Human Services still pushes out these funds, and it's really very little oversight. And so there are real names and faces and consequences to what Brett Favre did. Now, why I got this information, Angela, is because this morning I read the Times every day, and I read the Times, and you would think by reading the article about it that Brett Favre was on Capitol Hill to talk about his Parkinson's diagnosis.
That's right.
Yeah. There was no mention of the people of Mississippi. There was no reference of how impoverished the state is. There was no demographic breakdown on who was applying for these funds, overwhelmingly Black folks, who was applying for these funds and who was being denied. Also, a lot of poor white folks in Mississippi, I might add. So the fact that we are playing a violin for this man for stealing millions of dollars, and the media took that and said, we will sing your songs of sorrow with you, and completely bypass the impoverished people. And Andrew, you know a lot about this because we've talked about this. As if they don't deserve a song of sympathy. Yeah. As if they are not the main point of this story. I find it disgusting, and yet again, another failure of the media who would rather censor conservative white folks at the literal cost of our lives and our livelihoods when it comes to Black folks.
Total abject failure by the media. And complicity, by the way, because at this stage, when the controversy was first uncovered, Brett Favre was all in the middle of it. We saw messages come out. We saw his complicity and cooperation with it. And so it isn't as if the media had no clue what he was doing on Capitol Hill, what he was there to testify about, so on and so forth. I won't name the source. I mean, the media organization, but I got a text, a message alert in the middle of the day about Brett Favre, and it was about his diagnosis. And again, we can have sympathy for his diagnosis and wish him well on his journey ahead, but also hold him fully accountable for why he was on Capitol Hill in the first place. To further underscore Angela and Tiffany's points around the real need in Mississippi is that Mississippi's poverty rate is 20%, which is double the national poverty rate. So when we're talking about poor, we're talking about the epicenter of poverty in this country, being at a state where 20% of the people, where out of 10 people, right, 2 of every 10 is suffering at or below the poverty level in this state. These are resources that are desperately needed to wind up in the hands of the people who are struggling to keep food on the table and a roof over their head. But that's not what it's going to. And the shame of it all, the real shame of it all, is that these are the same elected officials who have as part of their talking points the need for people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Right? So that's supposed to apply to working poor people in your state, but it doesn't apply to the corporations and the moneyed interest and the former athletes whose children are at your state's schools, who need a new volleyball course or some a new turf added to this, that, and the third. It's shameful because what Republicans know, and I have to call them what they are because they're the ones who manufacture these talking points. What they are is they're hypocrites of the greatest order. It is not that they don't believe in handouts or hand-ups. It's just that they only believe in those things when it comes to other white folks and white people's companies and their white constituency who are, by the way, not poor, but the ones who are well-heeled, well-mentored, or in gambling debt, right? Who have the luxury to be in gambling debt. So this is embarrassing for the state at a whole new level, except they'll take no embarrassment at all. And I'm confused about what the change is going to be because I, as a former person mentored in government through the local level, I know that there's something called categorical grants, which could have gone directly to the cities, to the counties where poverty is the greatest, where there could have been much more, specific oversight by the local communities. But they didn't come down to Mississippi that way, and they don't come to the other states that way. They're coming into these states to these block grants where universally we have seen abuse, not just in this not just in this area, but across the board. When you send a big old chunk of money and you say to the state that this is intended for this purpose, and the state undoubtedly figures out a way to undermine the system, to undermine its intentional goal, to undermine those policies that they disagree with. Why would you send to Florida and to all these other states money for the Obamacare, universal care, and then allow them to redivert that money, reallocate that money, or reduce the state's commitment in this area, supplant it with the federal government's commitment, so you don't get any increase in resourcing at all. All you got was a plug and play. You got them using federal money, relieving state money and then not increasing the real need, not increasing the financial support into the areas that it's needed. I would just say Congress needs to take a really good, hard look at itself. They are the ones that created these categories of granting. And I would charge them to look at ways in which they can get the resources to the people who need them the most. And I know that we got to go to break, so I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Well, on the other side, go ahead.
No,
Angela.
Tiff, I was going to say too, on the other side, there's another little twist in this story that I think we need to get to that is, it demonstrates a failure of the courts and media combined.
Interestingly enough, that is a perfect segue into the death penalty that I want to talk about too. The failure of the courts and media combined. So right after this break, we'll pick it up.
So as you can see, there's so much passion around this topic. And I think living in our Black bodies in this country, you constantly are seeing the lack of justice. We're not asking to be able to cheat. We're asking for you to be able to play fair. And that is beyond the pale. So again, Brett Favre at this hearing says he's showing up because he doesn't want to see any more abuse when he's at the center of the abuse. He did pay back $1.1 million in the speaking fees, but he was asked to also pay $228,000 in interest. And he did not do that. Now, here's the twist I wanted.
He refused.
Yeah, here's the twist I wanted to throw out there for y'all. Ann Wolfe, who is the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who broke this story, is now facing jail time. Tiff, let me tell you why. The defamation case that she's at the center of is requiring through the courts that she turns over all of her sources that enabled her to be able to break this story to begin with. Now, they've been able to do the money trial. I mean, they could trace all of the steps. Whether Brett Favre says he knew or did not know, it is indeed factual that this money came from TANF. It was redirected money from TANF. So the fact that she's now in the center of this defamation case, being asked to turn over her sources, we know is crossing a red line for journalists. Turning over your sources.
It's crossing a constitutional line.
Correct.
Like that is a constitutionally protected right. It is freedom of the press in the First Amendment case. Like this could go all the way to the Supreme Court, which
is scary.
Who knows if that's helpful because that's a Republican funded place where they legislate from the highest court.
Right.
So that's utterly ridiculous.
And Angela, you've already pointed out the receipts are clear.
They're clear.
There's no need that you're not uncovering sources so that you can get to what is the source of the information.
Right. It's
They're
punishment.
uncovering sources for retribution, for payback.
Yes.
For you don't get away. You don't get to get away with telling on us and not paying some kind of cost for having done so. It's clear retribution. They're not trying to establish an order or a line of facts here. They're not trying to get to the point. The point is the cruelty of it.
The point
to get to the person.
The point also is what Tiff raised, which is the fact that this has now gone to the Mississippi Supreme Court. The editor-in-chief of Mississippi Today, which is, of course, where this story initially broke, says, with our appeal, the stakes are incredibly high. The Supreme Court can guarantee these critical rights for the first time in our state's history, or it could establish a dangerous precedent for Mississippi journalists and the public at large by tossing aside an essential First Amendment protection. So I just want to tell y'all, so the dude who broke the law, not once, not twice, but 3 times, by receiving these TANF funds to do things he knows weren't okay, which is why he has that in his text messages, is not on the hook, but he's getting, deservedly so, sympathy for Parkinson's, but not even being forced to answer questions about what he said in the hearing yesterday. The places where he perjured himself, where he's directly in contradiction with things that the facts tell us. And the person who broke the story is now facing jail time because she's refusing to comply with this court order, as she should. So I'm just up in arms.
I mean, I got to give the guy because a lot of times celebrities don't even always know the details. But what his text messages show us is that he's clear that he's on the wrong side of the law.
He's complicit.
He is clear about what the lines are that he shouldn't be crossing, which is why you ask for confidentiality.
That's exactly right.
Which is why you ask for these things to be done under the table, off the books. You don't ask for that when stuff is on the up and up. We all know that. When we're asked to give a speech somewhere, I am not asking whether it's on the up and up. I assume that this is all being done in line with what is allowable
Yeah.
the source of funding of which I would get.
What's ethical?
Would get paid.
Yeah.
What's ethical, but what's right. Otherwise, you don't
right.
do it.
I want to call this
What's legal and
episode
what's right.
Poor Brett Favre.
No. I don't want him getting that much.
I want to
coverage.
call it Poor Brett Favre, and there is.
We'll vote on it.
You said let's vote on it.
We should
There,
vote.
I
Democracy.
want to make my
Don't
argument.
stay in line
I want
till
to
all
make
the
my
votes are
argument
tallied.
because I want the people to see that this man benefited from resources designed for poor people, and he took advantage of it, and he did not need it. The fact that he was able to pay back the money demonstrates that he did not need the money. So you taking food out of poor children's mouths, you taking money out of the hands of people who desperately need these resources to feed these kids that y'all's asses keep making them have. I
think
call it
it is.
Poor
Right.
Brett
I
Favre.
think he
pro-life
gave
party.
the money back because it was ill-gotten.
I
And
know
he
why
knows
he
that
did.
it
It
was
was
I
a
said
ill-gotten.
PR
the fact that he
campaign.
could-
It was a PR campaign.
The reason why I don't think we ought to name it after him is one,
No.
because
I want to.
I
Let's clickbait the
don't
same way the
believe we
media
ought to
did.
center the dude who
I don't know if that's clickbait, to be
It
honest.
is.
You know, forget the clip. Well, it may
It
be,
is.
but you know, the truth is that the shortcut is going to work. The shortcut about this story is that you can get to what it's about by knowing that he's got Parkinson's, not what the substance of the matter is, but the shortcut that was just created by him yesterday. Him and his PR people,
The media
who
and the
know
media.
that the best way to bury this thing is to break other news.
What about
Yeah.
Brett
Break more
Favre's
interesting
shortcut?
news.
All right, we'll talk
All
about
right,
the title
fine.
later. I want to shift us to a somber story that
All this
is
is
relevant
sad.
and in the news this week. Yeah, it is. So Marcellus Williams, if you've not heard this name, I'll tell you a little bit about who this is. He's was 55 years old. He was convicted in the 1998 killing of a well-known journalist in St. Louis. Her name was Alicia Gale. She was a newspaper reporter. She was stabbed to death during a home invasion robbery in her suburban home. Now, I want to talk about why this conviction was faulty. Marcellus Williams was scheduled to be executed. He fought for years, for decades, to stay the execution. He was successful twice. He was not successful this week, sadly. Here's why this is a challenge. The prosecutor's office in this case admitted that it was wrong, and it fought to overturn the death sentence. There had been several violations of Marcellus's constitutional rights during the investigation at trial. In the filing, we've talked about Wesley Bell before, who is recently won his Democratic primary. He was now the prosecutor at this time. He wasn't the person who brought the case, but he inherited the case. He asserted that the defense lawyer had not presented mitigating evidence that could have spared Mr. Williams the death penalty. The prosecutor who had the case at the time had improperly rejected potential Black jurors, resulting with a jury of 11 white people and one Black member. Now, let me just tell you why this prosecutor rejected some of the jurors. One in particular, the prosecutor who then was Keith Lerner, he testified that in one case, he excluded a prospective Black juror because he closely resembled Marcellus Williams. He's quoted as saying, "They look like they could be brothers. Perhaps in his mind, we all look alike." The prosecutor detailed multiple issues with credibility of two key witnesses against Marcellus Williams and noted that Mr. Williams was not the source of footprints or hairs found at the crime scene, nor was any of his DNA found on the murder weapon. So he received a stay of execution in 2015 and 2017, but neither of these led to his conviction being thrown out. The family also, by the way, did not want to see him executed. The state attorney general, Republican, Andrew Bailey, who's facing a primary election right now, St. Louis, asked the state Supreme Court to set an execution date for Marcellus Williams. While in prison, Mr. Williams became a Muslim. He took the name Khalifa. He appeared in court recently with the white skull cap. You guys have seen those, to signify his Islamic devotion. And I want you all to hear what his son said just days before his execution in an act of remaining hopeful. And then I'll close us out on the other side.
Like, I hope a miracle happens, you know what I'm saying? I hope it's, all I wish is to free my father from abundant enslavement and spare his life.
What would you say that the Supreme Court if you had the opportunity to testify on behalf of your dad?
I would try to make them see that this is a murder on their behalf, and this is wrong, you know? And I believe my father is truly innocent, and they need to take a closer look.
Have you allowed yourself to even get to Tuesday right now?
Yeah, I already put it inside my body that I would be a witness to the execution. I'm gonna stand there firm and show my dad he's not alone if this what it comes to, and I'm ready for it. My mindset, my spirit, strong. Like, I'm doing this for my dad. It's bigger than me.
I want to read exactly what happened. This is according to the AP. As Williams lay awaiting execution, he appeared to converse with a spiritual advisor seated next to him. Williams wiggled his feet underneath a white sheet that was pulled up to his neck and moved his head slightly while his spiritual advisor continued to talk to him. Then Williams's chest heaved about a half dozen times, and he showed no further movement. He was pronounced dead at 6:10 p.m. at a state prison in Bon Terre, the Missouri, who's run by the Missouri Department of Corrections. I want to say this is not the party of pro-life. Mm-hmm. This is not the party of law and order. They are liars and they are lynchers. When we look at death penalties, the way that people are allowed to bear witness, the family did not appear there. We've talked on this show about how these executions go, how they're botched, how sometimes they're tortured because we don't know how to kill people properly. So we don't know if they suffer. They certainly have appeared to. When we talked about the number of Black people who are on death row. So this week in America, a man was lynched. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, as Black people who are so excited to carry one of our own to the White House, to ascend to the highest post in government, it is quite a paradox for us to be celebratory of this moment when state-sanctioned violence and murder persist. I don't know how to feel good about how we treat our people in this country, but I do know I have a lot of fight left in me when I hear these kind of stories. It is just heartbreaking.
To consider that the population in St. Louis is almost 20% Black, and that only 1 of 12 jurors was Black, is malpractice by the state, by who brought the charge. This is a sentence that it sounds like, if you hear from the prosecutor's office that there was a violation of rights in this process, actually multiple violations of rights in this of the accused rights, you now have sort of a backtracking on the fact pattern. Now you have forensics that don't put him at the scene, don't have any portion of it. And again, think about forensics. We're going back now, 40 years and using forensics to tie individuals to crime scenes in ways that could not have been done before. And in this case, it's the exact opposite. You're not able to tie the individual who you've accused to the crime scene. Now, if this much malpractice had taken place, one, the state should have vacated this sentence long ago. And if they thought that there was a chance that they had the wrong person on trial here and worse over, scheduled for the death penalty, that I don't know, common sense might prevail. And it just, in this case, it just, again, goes to show how valueless our Black bodies are in the eyes of so many in too many places. And I find it especially upsetting that it oftentimes happens in places where the Black population is a significant force to be dealt with, by way of by share population. We just talked about a story in Mississippi, the Blackest state in the damn country, where the Black population is a significant force to be dealt with, yet these kinds of injustices tend to happen. And I can't help but think what a shot over the bow this is supposed to be almost every time to us. Because they don't go in places where we're not part of the population, where we're minuscule, but in places where we're significant parts of the population, where the offense just seems that much greater, and yet no justice can be found. None.
We barely make up 14% of the population. We make up 41% of the population on death row.
And the thing is, in this particular case, we see something that we hear about happening all the time. Informant testimony. According to the Center on Wrongful Convictions, false testimony from incentivized witnesses is the leading cause of wrongful convictions, with informant testimony present in 49.5% of wrongful convictions since the mid-70s. Like that is astronomical, especially the fact that could even be the case, that you could rely on informant testimony to even give someone the death penalty is beyond the pale. No
informant
other
testimony where it's leveraged.
Right? Yes, they were incentivized informants.
Correct.
Right. Yes.
And according to the Times, his girlfriend at the time was one of those people.
Who
she was
had a
facing
record
a
of
conviction.
lying.
Precisely.
But
she
also have
passed
consequence on the other side
That's right.
of their testimony, right? When you talk about incentivized, just so folks know, it is you have something to gain by saying what we need you to say against this other person. Right. And if you don't deliver it that way, you are not of value, and therefore you're going to be penalized too. And my whole point around, and I know it's y'all's too, I believe that the whole point around having diverse juries is not so that you have somebody who looks like you and therefore is going to decide in your interest. No, it's so that you've got somebody that might resemble a lived experience that you might have, who may see this thing differently, who may ask questions that folks who don't have that same lived experience will never ask. It'll never come to them because it never occurs to come to them. It never occurs to ask the question differently. To inquire around a set of facts that are different than what your own lived experiences have been. So we don't conclude that having black jurors mean that you're going to get off on something that you've done. Not at all, in fact. I think when you have a diverse jury, is that you get diverse experiences, diverse perspectives, diverse lived experiences that see the questions and the answers differently than how they get boilerplate delivered. I know it to be true because I've sat on boards where had we not asked the question, the question would never have been asked. And oftentimes the question being asked becomes the difference between whether something goes forward or it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I want to say our thoughts are with the family of Marcellus Williams. And
the many
a
like
man
him.
who is arguing, and the many like him, and the many who are still sitting on death row as we speak. Because according to the reported evidence by the New York Times and others, it certainly points to doubt. And that is the whole point of a jury, that you, of a trial, that you are convicted beyond a reasonable doubt. People keep saying shadow of a doubt, but legally it is beyond a reasonable doubt. And there are multiple reasonable doubts here. Mm-hmm. Our families also go out to, or our hearts also go out to Leisha Gale, who was the victim here, because at this point, I would say, my own opinion, is that it's quite possible that her killer remains at large or unpunished.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's been a little somber. We do have some viewer questions, and Andrew, I know that you have a topic. So what do you guys think if we play a viewer question now, and then we'll answer it on the other side? Okay, so give us a question, Nick.
Good morning, Native Land Pod. The name is Devin from Houston, Texas. First off, I really love the pod. Love the work you all are doing. Keep up the good work. One of the questions that I had for you all is, shortly after Vice President Harris became the Democratic nominee, or even before that, some Republicans came out and fully endorsed her as their presidential candidate. I feel like that might cause some split ticket issues down the line, because there are some down ballot Republicans who still fully support the former president's platform. So first question is, why isn't more attention being given to those candidates and highlighting where they might diverge from Vice President Harris's platform and could potentially be a headwind to her efforts? Second question is there anything that can be done from a political strategy standpoint to offset that? Thanks.
All right, we're going to answer that question on the other side of this break.
Well, we just heard a question from a viewer before, right?
Devin.
Before we took a took a break, and we're appreciative of you, Devin, for your support and listenership, support of the show. And I think where I want to make sure we get his question clearly, and so I want to ask y'all, because I may be a little confused. I understand what ballot split ballot voting is, which is where you may choose a Democrat on one and then flip over and do a Republican on another race. But the accountability piece that he's referring to, who does he want us to hold to account? Are these Republicans who are running for public office, who are saying that they're with Kamala on one end to get the benefit of a split ticket voting, or what? I could be complicating it in some ways that aren't necessary.
What I understood his question, Devin, apologies if I get it wrong, but what I think he was trying to ask is, first, just because you're voting for Kamala Harris, you are still a problem. Not always is the enemy of my enemy my friend. If you're voting for her because you don't like Donald Trump, but you're still going to vote down ballot for Republican senators who are going to do everything they can to block her agenda, then you are a problem. And how do we navigate that? And why isn't there more coverage and discussion around that? That's what I understood it to mean. And I just want to say a quick example of that could potentially be in Texas, where, Angela, Colin Allred is running for Senate in a really tight race in Texas. And there are Republicans who have come out and publicly endorsed Congressman Colin Allred, a former. That's who it was. That is who played for the Tennessee Titans. I knew I read something about somebody.
You can scare me. I didn't know what was just happening.
Okay. I just thought about it.
Lord
I'm like, I know
Thank
I
you,
read something in the paper about
expert.
somebody.
Finish your thought, ma'am.
So I'm trying to tell y'all I be knowing. Anyway, he played for the Tennessee Titans. And now he is in Congress and he's running to unseat Ted Cruz and multiple Democrats. But there have been some Republicans to endorse him. There have been some Democrats to endorse Ted Cruz. But that is a perfect example. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Who is endorsing Ted Cruz? That is a mess. Call him out. Name him. Shame him.
I know. Let me find it. Oh,
we come back to it. I'm gonna tap in here while you find that. I just want to say quickly. I'm not personally aware. Doesn't mean, just like in this instance, that my personal awareness means that it's not happening. But I'm not aware of any current sitting Republican elected official who has endorsed Kamala Harris. I am aware of former Trump staffers, former Trump cabinet officials, former national security advisors from multiple administrations, former economic advisors from multiple administrations endorsing the Harris-Walz ticket. That said, it could very well be that those folks too vote a split ticket. It very well could be. I think that you calling it out in the question in the way that you just did, and Tiff and Andrew's answers, are the kinds of things that we should be doing to calling that out. That's great that you're promoting and endorsing this particular agenda and platform. You do understand how politics works, and that does mean that people need to be in lockstep with them in getting that agenda passed. I'm already worried because I do know of one Democrat who's saying that he will not endorse Kamala Harris. I'll say Democrat, and that is Joe Manchin, who said that he can't support her and she ought to be ashamed of herself because she wants to throw out the filibuster to codify Roe. Wow. Joe Manchin, if there was ever a time to throw out the damn filibuster, you would think it'd be then. Anyway, Tiff, it looks like you found your name.
Is he a Democrat?
I mean, go to hell, Joe Manchin.
But I thought he officially switched his party to independent. I could be wrong.
I understand that, but as far as I know, he still caucuses with the Dems. So.
The man is a legend in his own mind.
Well, I just wish that we'd stop.
He also contemplated running for president against her, if y'all remember, when Joe Biden vacated originally. So first of all, there is sitting Republicans who have endorsed her. The Republican John Giles, Arizona, is the sitting mayor, a sitting mayor in Arizona who has endorsed her. But your point is well taken, Angela, which is for Republicans who have something to potentially lose, like their elections or re-elections, they have not, by and large, gone to the record to say that they support Kamala Harris. I don't want that by any means to undermine the bravery of those who have come out, including somebody who I detested and really still do, Mr. Enron himself, coming forward and throwing his support, but behind her. But the truth is there are going to be ballot splitters. We've seen that. We saw that in Georgia, where 2 Democrats got elected to the U.S. Senate, yet a Republican governor got reelected to the governorship. We've seen it, frankly, in many places around the country. And I think the only way we can extract, I think, something from this is to be as loud and proud as we can by saying that Donald Trump in and of himself is not the only problem. He is a problem. He may be at the apex of the problem, but if he's got a lockstep U.S. Senate behind him, someone who is willing to carry out mass theft against the American people by not appointing or confirming Democratic appointees, by Democratic presidents who sit in office right now, who put people up for the courts because they don't believe a Democrat ought to be able to appoint justices or judges to the federal bench. That's what's happening right now. Let's be clear about it. We have Republicans who are holding hostage, who are acting in contradiction of the Constitution by staving off a Democratic president's ability to appoint the individuals of his choice to offices that he has total autonomy, with the exception of advising and consent from the U.S. Senate, to appoint. He's the only one who can make those appointments.
I think, but I agree with all that. I think his point, which is one we all echo, is kind of like how people are always like big up in the Lincoln Project, right? You know, the wing of never Trumpers who are like, we don't rock with him. But then when you look, it's like, yeah, but y'all were part of the problem that helped him get there. Right. Like, y'all are cannibalizing. So if this is where we are, like, we watching y'all after we get a President Kamala Harris.
And we should.
Because I don't really trust you. Like, we allies for now,
we're
but I'm still watching
now,
you.
But that's it. I agree.
So all these never Trumpers, it's like, just remember this, because you all were you supported the Tea Party. You supported the first Make America Great Again candidate. We ain't forgot. We ain't no fools.
A lot of those people on the list, Tiffany, as you know, are the ones who helped to engineer Bush into office, and before him, Reagan, and so on and so forth.
And Nixon and all of them. I wanted to say the Democrat who's supporting Ted Cruz, just so y'all know, in Texas, do the right thing, Texas, make Texas purple, for crying out loud, is Kim Ogg. She's the Democratic district attorney for Harris County. But and this is according to the New York Times. On the other side of that, Liz Cheney has endorsed Colin Allred. So split party. And then when it comes to Joe Manchin, he, according to NBC News, this was in May, he said that he is leaving the Democratic Party and registering as an independent. And that at the time was raising speculation about whether he may run for another Senate term or if he's eyeing a run for governor in the fall. So anyway, Joe Manchin can
never heard of a bigger self-promoter.
I got a question.
Never heard of
I got a question for you, Andrew. Andrew.
Yeah, ma'am.
What, since you're dressed like Philip Michael Thomas today?
What? I'm going back to my roots.
No, Andrew, do not.
Let him be Geek Squad if he wants. Let him be Geek Squad.
Oh my God. Okay, well, my computer is running a little slow.
That's why this is busted open right here too.
Exactly.
It ain't button.
Anyway,
no, it is.
What do you think? Because I have some thoughts, but I know you want to talk about it. But what do you think about these celebrities? Weighing in, or
being asked to weigh in on oftentimes it's not that they're not necessarily coming to the table trying to get their political opinions out there, but are oftentimes asked. And Tiff, actually this really falls better in your court, because you're often one who reminds us that why is it that the media is going to the athlete or the actor or actress to talk about politics when likewise they don't do the same oftentimes with white actors or white athletes or activists, asking them to opine on major political questions? And by the way, this isn't to say that actors, actresses, and athletes don't have opinions about these things. That may be well and good.
Taxpaying citizens.
Absolutely, they should. But this all came up, obviously, and we visited this on episodes before, but this all came up in light of Janet Jackson being, or essentially saying that she had heard that Kamala Harris wasn't black and maybe her dad was white. And you know, a lot of voices have descended upon her. On that note, I got my own private thoughts about how I felt about it, but we're at the stage now where I think it's important to lift this beyond just being about her, and how it is that we treat celebrity when it comes to engaging in politics, and whether or not should we really be going to them, asking them about their opinion about wars here and there and candidates here and there, that's as Whoopi said, and I think we ought to roll Whoopi's comments here. This ain't what they do. That's not what they do.
Superstar Janet Jackson just did a wide-ranging interview with British newspaper The Guardian, but most of the focus is on when she was asked her thoughts on VP Kamala Harris possibly becoming the first black female president. She said, she answered by saying that she had heard that Harris's father was white, which we all know is false. Janet Jackson is not a political animal. Yeah. She does. She's a musician. Her life is doing this, and she's mourning her brother. I sometimes have said stuff, and I was wrong. We all do it. So okay, a little grace for the girl.
Hey, y'all, I mean, I think we should take those comments, in the heart that they are intended, but also to ask the question of whether or not we ought to be holding celebrities to the same standards that we might hold other politicians or public leaders, public figures, when it comes to, frankly, talking about things that are not in their bailiwick, that are not, frankly, the things that they get up and look at the news and follow and so on and so forth like we might. And moreover, if they can be infected with misinformation, who are we to blame regular citizen Joe who starts, retorting comments that sound ape shit crazy because they're being directly filtered toward them so that they can repeat it. I'm curious if y'all think this is a double standard, no standard, should be a standard.
I just want
to
be clear because I definitely don't want anyone to mistake any of the three of us. I don't want you all to think any of us are saying, to Andrew's point, that they don't have a right to speak. Sure. Like, you are a tax-paying citizen. You have every right to use your platform how you want to do it. And if you choose to weigh in on politics, great, do it. I do think when you have large platforms, there comes with it a responsibility to be somewhat informed, somewhat well-read on the subject you're talking about. When it falls short of that, I do think it's irresponsible to come out there and say something that's demonstrably false or Googleably false. I think we have to share responsibly. I don't think it's responsible to share conspiracy theories or say things, and just a reminder to celebrities, like, shutting up is free. Like, you don't even have to weigh in on. If somebody asks you a question you don't know, it's probably best to just say, I don't really know about things like that, so I'm gonna keep quiet. Now, I want to say, when we look at some of the celebrity engagement here, to me, the responsibility does fall to the media. A large following does not a political operative make. Okay. Yeah. I do not want to hear from people. Like, it is ridiculous to me. And Angela knows I go off on this all the time. You will see people on these news platforms, on a news show, and they are chironed as strategists. And I want y'all to start Googling some of these people and tell me what campaign they ever strategized on. They are not strategists. If they work for some who gives a crap election 20 years ago for the school board, that counts. It does not make you a Democratic strategist or a Republican strategist, for that matter. Talking on television is not a job. It is in conjunction with. Yeah. None of us ever just popped up out here like a fetus and, here we are, we have opinions. We all had decades of work that led to an informed opinion, informed thought, informed work.
But Tiffany, this is where, I'm sorry. I was going to say that it complicates it, because don't we often go after celebrities to weigh in? Yes. Hey, will you endorse?
Yes.
Will you do this?
Yes.
We don't. Yes. But there are some people. Well, you're saying yes. I do not. We don't. Your campaign may have. Yeah. But as campaigns, yes. As a journalist, no. I don't care. And even when I did anytime I worked on a campaign, it was from a comms perspective. What the data shows is it really does not matter when celebrities endorse or not. That does not. There's not any proof.
More than anything, the value of it is it brings attention.
It does.
But if you're not a national campaign, yes, it can bring national attention. What matters more than a celebrity endorsement are those local community validators. That's what matters. And I also think it's a difference between a campaign going after a celebrity than it is a news outlet platforming a celebrity and propping them up like they have any idea what the hell they're talking about. You can ask them about their platform. You can ask them about their show. You can ask them how they built it. You can ask them, what are you hearing from people who follow you, who watch you, who like you, asking them, what does the party need to do for these things? Sure. I just think that's a disservice to the audience, and it helps to dumb down the American electorate. But Angela, it sounds like you might disagree. I
feel very conflicted here for a number of reasons. I think first, I just want to point out I'm not going to Whoopi's thing because I think that that's of no consequence here. I think what I really want to tap into is what the article was about. So Janet Jackson was getting profiled in The Guardian. The name of the piece is, "I shouldn't have listened to those around me. Janet Jackson on Michael, motherhood, and how she's taking back control." When you read that headline, you do not, and really the entire article, you do not expect that Janet Jackson is going to somehow be used in a Donald Trump ad of misinformation for why Kamala Harris is not a Black woman. The journalist even says in this piece, and I'm doing this because there are a lot of people who are seeing that one quote, but it's completely out of context. Out of context or not, she is wrong. That is true. So it is, on that record, she's saying about joining voices in protest to social injustice and pushing toward a world rid of color lines. "I wonder where she stands on the forthcoming election. After all, I say, America could be on the verge of voting in its first Black female president, Kamala Harris." That's when Janet Jackson pops in. Well, you know what I heard, what they said. I haven't watched the news in a few days. All of that. She's not really being propped up as a political strategist here or as someone who should be speaking, for democracy and protecting it, as someone who no longer even lives here. She's being asked in the historical nature of this, just as so many other people did when we saw every single magazine covering Barack Obama, every single, rapper, rock star, country music artist, Bruce Springsteen, whomever, talking about the importance of Barack Obama's election in 2008, right? And those things were all welcome then. They were welcomed by magazines who sold more because they were included. They were welcomed certainly by Barack Obama's campaign, which I would argue was the first time in a presidential where they had a full-on surrogate operation because of how important celebrity voices were in that context. That said, I think it is just as critical to know, if we know that celebrity voices could be influential, as Taylor Swift's endorsement was the night of the debate, literally changing the news cycle, then we also know that they could be equally harmful, and they should be held to account for the things they do that are harmful. I have not liked the very personal attacks that have been lobbed against her for saying something ignorant. Right? Like, and I understand, like, people can joke about it and all of that, but you're not shaming her into truth. You're getting her to be more cocooned than she already was, which who even knew that was possible? I think that Janet Jackson should be made to apologize for the misinformation. It sounds like she's not. It sounds like she's doubling down in it. When you look at her manager brother's Instagram account, there's no wonder why. I'll let you guys go do that for yourselves. But it is remarkably frustrating because on one hand, we'll say these people really do matter. And on the other hand, we'll be like, well, who are they? They don't know nothing. It's like we got to kind of find a place. And I would argue the place is they do matter. And if they don't know anything, it is the obligation of those who would teach us about sports, who would teach us about entertainment, who when we leave or distance ourselves a little more from our normal strategy jobs and go into TV and media and into speeches and into, influencer deals or endorsement deals, those same people who coach us up on those things, we need to be coaching them up on about how politics works and facts when they come into play. That's my rant.
I don't doubt that. And I guess her
context
for me, the context of why she did the interview was not important to me. Because at the point that she decided she was going to contradict the asker of the question, the journalist, and saying, how will you feel about the first Black woman president? And her interjecting a set of facts, not real facts, a set of information that was not introduced through the question by saying, oh, no, I heard that she ain't that. That's when it turns for me, because you're not responding to the question that was asked of you, which is by a journalist. How do you feel about the first Black woman president? You've now said, oh, no, let me give you news. They say she not Black. So then it's like, now we're trifling into what is the irresponsible. But the reason why I tried to lift it to, sort of what the power is of misinformation, that if you can be Janet Jackson, believably by most of us to be surrounded by handlers, people who shuffle and maybe publicists who keep her, to date on things, that if you can be infected by misinformation, what safeguards exist for the average citizen as to what they are, what standard we then treat them to? And the truth is, I think about averages. I think the woman's been vice president for almost 4 years. She's not a new entity onto the stage.
But she
and
is
so,
to some people. I think it is a point of privilege
that for 4
for
years
us to
in
say
the public space is
but it
Googleable.
hasn't been that. Sure, Andrew, but it hasn't been that public. We have to acknowledge the fact that as much work as Kamala Harris has done, there was not a lot of coverage of her until she.
Agreed.
That's all I'm saying. So
Agreed.
we're expecting people to go and dig. I think that's a point of privilege we have because of our connection to this work. I am not.
No,
just,
what I'm saying is I don't expect
and,
people to introduce facts that are not facts.
But
I don't expect you to go
I do expect
beyond.
them to do that because they consistently do it. And I do expect, maybe this is where I have too many high hopes over media. I expect that the moment somebody says something like this, you see it going off the rails. That's not the point of the piece. Like, why even print it? Why print that?
Because of the benefit that it has
No,
gotten.
but this is the same publication that is like, oh, there's rampant misinformation. There's rampant misinformation. If you go and then publish it, you know that's the piece that's going to be clipped in the soundbite. You're now feeding the very monster that you rail against, that you raise money for, The Guardian. And I'm not pointing blame at one person or one entity. Janet Jackson is at fault. Randy Jackson is at fault. The people questioning her blackness are at fault. The Guardian for printing it, I think, are at fault. They did not need to traffic in this. They didn't.
So that is where I would say, like, that's the hard thing, I think, with newsrooms, because it's all, subjective.
Sure.
Like you can't, right. Like you saying that you should not have run it. Other people can say, well, no, that's newsworthy. She said something.
I get it.
I'm kind of with you, Angela. Like, I don't know that I would have run, if I were the reporter in that case, I probably would not have run it. I don't know that I would fault somebody else for making a different choice. But I personally and professionally, I think that was irresponsible, especially when you could correct her and keep it moving.
She did, to her credit, to the journalist's credit, she did try to correct her, and then it looks like there was a back and forth for some time. She printed all
I'm
that.
saying correct her and not run it.
Yep.
These are corporate organizations.
Say, right. I get it, and viewers and readers and all that matters. Yeah. But the difference because Angela, you were talking about, when Obama came and people were weighing in on that. That is very different from what I'm talking about. When I say, I would think if I were a reporter covering entertainment, yes, I want to ask, you're a woman. How does it feel to see, a woman ascend to this? What are your thoughts? You're a black person. How does it feel to see this? You can ask questions like that. To me, the problem comes when you say, what does the Democratic Party need to be doing when it comes to reaching a broader coalition of voters? Taylor Swift, what are your thoughts on that? Why are we ever asking Taylor Swift about it? Like, that is not her area of expertise. That is a problem. The thing is, they would not ask Taylor Swift that. They only do that when it comes to black folks. They disproportionately do that when it comes to black folks. They don't know the difference between an Isabella Wilkerson and a Janet Jackson, to be honest. They think, it's all the same thing. And I think that is not only disrespectful, it is irresponsible.
I hear that point.
Not that these people don't have a right to weigh in, but it's irresponsible for the media to elevate them.
I hear that point, Tiff. And Andrew, I want you to jump in. I just have one little thing. And I would say this here too. For Andrew's campaign, one of the things that I thought was really important was that we got a firm that had run ads and run successful corporate campaigns to give Andrew a different type of appeal, because we know that there are certain products that do better at appealing to broad swaths of audiences. So that was not a typical political firm. And so we're asking them, hey, what do you think we can do to ensure broad appeal of this candidate and present him differently? I think there's no difference in asking someone with expertise in entertainment, whether they've cut ads or movies, if they do trailers or whatever, how can we present this information in a different way? We shouted out Gary Chambers on this program for presenting a political ad in a different way. Yep. And I think when we get those other voices, it's to add perspective, not because they've had 50 years of expertise in the political space like James Carville.
But you understand the difference. You're talking about a campaign. I'm talking about a newsroom.
But I think I'm
these are two different things.
If the newsroom is asking a question because they're curious about how a candidate could break through, I'm still not even faulting them for that. Now, if they use that to say, Mike Tyson said that this is everything.
Which is what they would do.
Sometimes,
right? That's what they consistently do.
I was trying to acknowledge that's the point of inside your point that I agree with. I am saying there's still spaciousness for allowing diverse voices to say these are some places where that I know could work if they use them on me, or if they took this approach, or if they took this approach for this zip code where I'm from. I don't think there's anything wrong with that for diverse opinions. But if
I think there's an embarrassment of riches of people who actually do that work, who are experts, who understand, who could weigh in.
I get your point, Tiff, and I by and large agree. I will say I am never going to expect a newsroom to do the editing when they can quite as easily go out and ask anybody they want who they think might be a newsmaker, that might give them a bigger break, that might make their story that much bigger. Yeah. I don't expect that they're ever going to turn away from that person should they be willing to answer the question and put it out there. And especially if their answer creates a whole new conversation in and of itself. And that's what happened here. This was not a gotcha question to Janet Jackson. This was not a, you got to be well cinched in politics to know one way or another. This was like,
how you feel about a black woman going to be the president, girl?
That's it. And this is where this is where I identify the problem for her, which is she tried to, having not watched news in the past couple of days, to introduce some facts. A couple.
Right.
What she thought was years. They were not facts.
No, for her. I mean, she thought she was going to introduce new information.
She don't get to have her own facts. She can have her own
You're absolutely right, Angela. She attempted to introduce information that she thought was new and different than what the reporter herself was asking. And so when she took that liberty, she opened up a different can. And that's why, again, I think everybody can make mistakes. But I tell you this much, these artists know how to stay out of trouble. They spend a lifetime staying out of trouble. And so when you walk headfirst into it, or trying to, at least cover over it. At least paper over the trouble. When that happens,
we about to be in trouble because we didn't take no break.
We got to take a quick break.
You know what? I'll take us to the break. Okay. I'm going to finish my point, which is simply to say my point is now done, and we can go to a break. But it seems like a break is only possible when I'm in the middle of saying something.
Andrew, that is nonsense. That is nonsense.
To take a break, Andrew. Pick up your point on the other side, Andrew.
Welcome back, everybody. We are coming to the end of the episode that I thought ended.
We've been fighting all
and we're going to do it.
Why is he doing this today?
And we're going to
We've been fighting on a hurricane.
We're going to start the end by listening to one more viewer question.
Hi, everyone. This is Deepthi. I grew up in Central Ohio. Now I live in Dallas, Texas. And I wanted to ask if y'all had been watching Fight Night on Hulu. It's a show about Atlanta in the 60s.
Yes, it is not on Hulu.
Where it became what the show's calling Black Vegas. Has a really awesome, mostly black cast. And I was wondering if you guys, had seen it, what your thoughts are, and what you may think its relevance could be in pop culture in terms of just seeing black stories told in a more mainstream way. Thanks for listening and chatting. And I also want to shout out a great little small business. This is Christy Rice. She's got these great shirts that say "Wear your shoes, ladies." There's glass everywhere. Highly recommend. But thanks.
Oh, I love that. One. We want one. We want a t-shirt.
Also, Will Packer, run us some money, because I don't know why you got this girl to send in this question in the show like you didn't have to pay for an advertisement.
You know who else is EP on that? iHeart.
But iHeart owes us some money too. Andrew, this is a great point to talk about misinformation, because that show is on Peacock.
It is not on Hulu. It's on Peacock. And I would say, I've been watching this show. It is so good. I talked to y'all about it when I was on the Vineyard, and we did a Q&A with the cast. It is really good. And it started out as a podcast on iHeart. Will Packer is the executive producer on it, along with Will iHeart is also an executive producer on it. But it's really, have y'all been watching that?
I need to start.
Okay. You have time, because I thought I was going to be able to binge the whole thing. And then I got to the last episode, and new episodes are dropped every week. So I didn't, I thought I was going to be able to watch it in one sitting. But it's like 5 episodes in now, and new episodes drop every Thursday, I've since found out. But it is really good. It's funny. Taraji Henson is amazing. Kevin Hart is amazing. Terrence Howard, Sam Jackson, Chloe from Chloe and Bailey. It's really good. And it's basically about this heist in Atlanta. Hallie, sorry. I'm so bad.
Bailey's her last name. You just was moving fast. I just want to make sure.
Okay, thank you. That's so bad. But It's basically some dudes plan to rob a party the night Muhammad Ali was fighting in Atlanta. That is where the story begins, and it is really good. But that is a free ass commercial for.
That's what I'm saying.
For Fight
Andrew,
Night.
get your fellow rattler. You ain't slick, Will Packer.
We love you, Will. We love you. Know you stood Angela up during the DNC. We love you.
He stood y'all up too. That was supposed to be your surprise.
He did. I know. I'm mad about it. I wanted my surprise. Anyway, that because people were asking who was the surprise. Angela never said it was Will Packer. He was, and he came like 5 seconds after we got off the air, but it was too late. Yes, about 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
We
that
love
is true.
Will.
All right. What should we talk about before we get to CTAs? What are we talking about on the mini pod? Oh, wow. Silence.
Andrew gonna talk.
I know. Andrew got an attitude.
He got a stank attitude right now.
What you want to talk about, Andrew? Your attitude?
Yes.
Preparation for Category 3 hurricane hitting you directly. What
I
should
know,
you be
you
doing
got a lot to
hours
do.
before?
He should have.
You have a lot to do.
He's right. He should have
Okay.
an attitude. He's trying to just save
That's
his
fine.
family. He's got
Fair
a
enough.
Superman shirt underneath this tight white button up.
Well, we can't tell because it's buttoned all the way to the top.
You'll never see it again.
Shut
It's
up,
over.
Andrew. Okay,
Long
I don't know
lockdown.
what we should
Nick
talk about.
suggested campaign finance. I'd be up for that.
I'm against it.
I am
Just
too.
for
You know,
GP.
okay, all right, skip it. We're not gonna do that.
I mean, maybe not in
what
that
about
way.
that one that you said, Angela? It was you were talking about. We didn't really quite flesh it out, but it was like one of our more like spiritual.
Oh, we need the Jesus. We need Jesus today too.
Yes,
It
but
was-
you
Along with
walked
it,
us
Lord.
through one.
It was.
Do you remember, Andrew?
Oh,
You
I
were
know. I
saying-
know what it was. It was about. We had this conversation. I think often, like the three of us, we are all the responsible ones in our family. Not shading anybody else in the family, but in doing
Shade
that,
from me.
Andrew's on a mission today, y'all. He is burning as
Shade
he
from me.
goes. He's just burning it all down. But, there's this idea that when you do carry that you have a lot to fix. You're constantly fixing, you're constantly problem solving, you're constantly doing. And Tiff was like, have you ever asked people, if they want your help, if they want to just vent, or how they want you to engage? And I'm like, no, bitch, when I hear a problem, I'm jumping. It happened this
Solve.
morning. I won't even say what it was, but it happened this morning. I was off to the races and nobody'd asked for my help. And so I think there is something there for us in surrender,
Talk about it.
in control. We were just talking about Miss Jackson, if you nasty, in learning how to show up and where the trauma might be in people not maybe showing up for us. And so we're trying to
Let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, maybe.
I like that as a mini
What
pod.
does
'cause
Andrew
I
I
feel
can
like
rock
that?
with it.
Okay.
I can rock with it.
Okay,
Andrew,
good.
you're going
All
to
right,
start.
So tune
Since
into the
you
mini
think we
pod.
only take breaks when you're
Yes.
talking, you're going to start.
Thank
Child,
you.
that ain't gonna
So
change.
just a reminder
Andrew,
for the
that's
viewers,
not
mini pods.
true. Stop telling that lie.
Ignoring him.
We all get cut
Ignoring
off by a
him.
break. And
Seriously.
sometimes
And
they
we
were
are now
literally
to the
putting up
break
a
of the
sign
show.
taking a break.
Sometimes, I
Okay,
gotta say
we
one
are
more
not.
shady thing. Sometimes,
Yes.
Bishop Filibuster, you have made your point and you are making a second or a third or a ninth point, and we just got to go to break.
I know.
And they're literally putting up a sign saying,
I
let's
know,
go to
I
break.
know,
He
I
doesn't
know.
care.
Let's break now. It's
I'm
the
s-
end of the show.
I'm gonna break you. I'm gonna break your glasses.
Okay, can I just say for our viewers, our mini pods drop every Monday.
They already broke
So
it.
please tune into this mini pod because it's not going to be totally political, even though I do think there's a political element to it. So I love this topic and I'm looking forward to talking
Andrew's
about
gonna
it.
start
All right,
us off
CTAs.
because he doesn't think that he gets to talk enough.
Ciao.
That's not
Andrew,
true.
why don't you start us off with your CTA
Yeah,
too?
start us off, Andrew, please. I
I've
love
got
you.
one plan. If you're in Florida and any of the 40 or so states, I hope you are making preparation. This is Thursday. Impacts expected today. And be safe, everybody.
Be safe.
I like it.
please.
I like it.
Mine is to please look up the names of other people who are similarly situated to Marcellus Williams. Tiff's tears, Andrew's tears, our heart-wrenching moments today should not be in vain. We should remember the names of these folks and we should motivate and work to support them long before we're requesting a stay of execution. What is our
Hear.
responsibility to these folks who are on death row and should not be? I don't think we should even have death row, which is probably another mini pod, but
Check out the Innocence
yeah,
Project.
that's
too.
oh
one.
yes, thank you,
Part of
AG. That's such a good shout. And shout out to Barry Sheck. We love you, Barry.
Yes, Barry Sheck. And can we thumbtack that? Because I like the death row one too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should, Nick, if you're listening, make a note. We want to add death penalty. I'll be quick with mine. My CTA is President Faye. He is the youngest elected leader in Africa. He is the newly elected president of Senegal. And I was reading a profile on him. He hasn't done a lot of Western media, but I was reading a profile on him, and he said something which I thought was really interesting, and that is by 2050, Africa's population will likely be nearly 2.5 billion, which will account for an estimated 1 of every 4 people on the planet. I just think we are the global majority. I just think that is a really fascinating statistic. But he also said something else about just the world and how they deal with Africa. And he made the point that Africa is hardly responsible for climate change. Yet when emissions from the developed world causes polar ice caps to melt, the repercussions are felt on our shores. And he railed against the injustice of rich nations continuing to use coal while refusing to finance fossil fuel projects in developing countries on the continent. So honestly, I saw him and thought he was fine, and I read the profile and I learned all this stuff, and I was like, wow, he's 44, which makes he is in my age range of dating. If I don't know if he wants to DM me or whatever he hears it. Anyway,
Andrew, this is what you
him.
call a shame-filled plug. There's not a shameless plug about this moment. This is shame-filled. Not Tiff throwing herself to an African president. On the podcast.
Let's rescue her by saying,
thank
you for joining us today. Welcome home. What are the outtakes? How many days to the election?
I think it's 41 days to the election.
So.
Are we still in the 40s? Really? Okay.
Yeah.
It's 40 by the time the podcast airs. Try again.
40 days to election.
40 days
so
and 40 nights and a lifetime before Tiff throws herself at the mercy of another dignitary. My God.
Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome home.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rod Gillum and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth. Even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.